Hey survivors, tonight we're diving into something that'll keep you awake, and not just because of my voice. We're talking about what it would really be like to survive a zombie apocalypse. Forget the Hollywood heroes with unlimited ammo and perfect aim. The truth? You'd probably be dead within the first week. Before we begin this nightmare, hit that like button if you enjoy staring into the abyss with me, and let me know in the comments. Where would you be when the outbreak starts? And what time is it where you're listening? It's always fascinating to see who's awake at 3 AM pondering the end of civilization. Now turn off the lights, maybe grab a snack that doesn't require cooking, and let's explore your final days together. Day 1. The bite that changes everything. Congratulations. You've just witnessed patient 0 bite your neighbour. The good news? You're still breathing. The bad news? That won't last long. It starts like any Tuesday morning in suburban America. You're in your kitchen, coffee brewing, scrolling through social media complaints about traffic jams and weather reports. The most dangerous thing on your mind is whether you remember to set your DVR for tonight's show. Outside, children wait for school buses, joggers pound the sidewalks, and Mrs. Henderson from apartment 3B waters her petunias in their little window box. Then the screaming starts. Not the usual neighbourhood drama, someone's dog got loose, kids fighting over a basketball. This is different. Primal. Desperate. The kind of sound that makes your coffee cup freeze halfway to your lips and your spine straighten with ancient recognition of danger. You peer through your kitchen window and see Jim Morrison from down the hall stumbling across the courtyard. Jim, who always nods politely in the elevator, who complains about the broken washing machine and leaves passive-aggressive notes about noise levels. Except this isn't Jim anymore. Not really. His skin has taken on a greyish pallor, like old meat left too long in the refrigerator. His clothes are torn and stained with something dark and wet. His movements are jerky, uncoordinated, like a marionette being operated by a drunk puppeteer. But it's his eyes that make your blood freeze, cloudy, unfocused, like he's sleepwalking through a fever dream that never ends. Mrs. Henderson's screams grow louder, more frantic. She's backing away from her flowers, hands raised defensively, her face a mask of confusion and terror. Jim? Jim, what's wrong? Are you hurt? That's when you see the blood. Jim's mouth is smeared with it, dark and thick, and there's something caught between his teeth that looks suspiciously like fabric, or skin. Mrs. Henderson makes the first fatal mistake of the apocalypse. She approaches someone who needs help. It's what humans do, what we've been programmed to do for thousands of years of evolution. See someone in distress, offer assistance. It's what makes us human. It's also what gets us killed. Jim lunges forward with surprising speed for someone who can barely walk straight. Mrs. Henderson has time for one more scream before his teeth sink into her throat. The sound that follows is something you'll never forget. The wet tearing of flesh, like paper being ripped underwater, combined with a horrible gurgling that might be screams or might be something worse. You drop your coffee cup. It shatters on the kitchen floor, ceramic shards scattering like tiny bones, but you don't hear it. You can't hear anything except that terrible sound and the frantic beating of your own heart. Mrs. Henderson stops screaming. The silence that follows is somehow worse than the noise. Your phone buzzes against the counter, the cheerful chime absurdly normal in the horror of the moment. Emergency alert. Shelter in place. Avoid contact with injured or disoriented individuals. Authorities responding to multiple incidents of civil unrest. Civil unrest, that's what they're calling it. As if Jim Morrison from 3B just got really passionate about tax policy. You back away from the window, hands shaking, trying to process what you just witnessed. Your brain keeps offering rational explanations. Bath salts, mental breakdown, elaborate prank for some reality show. People don't just turn into cannibals on Tuesday mornings. This is America, not some third world hellscape. But through your living room window, you can see smoke rising from downtown. Car alarms wail in the distance like electronic banshees. A helicopter circles overhead, its searchlight cutting through the growing haze, and you realise with dawning horror that whatever just happened to Mrs. Henderson isn't isolated to your apartment complex. Your phone buzzes again. Text from your sister in Portland. Are you seeing the news? What's happening in your city? Another from your college roommate. Dude, turn on CNN right now. And another from your mother. Call me as soon as you get this. I'm worried. You fumble for the remote, nearly dropping it twice before managing to turn on the television. The local news is chaos. A reporter standing in front of what used to be St Mary's Hospital, his usually perfect hair dishevelled, his voice cracking with barely controlled panic. Scenes of unprecedented violence throughout the metropolitan area. Hospitals are reporting being overwhelmed with bite victims showing signs of extreme aggression. The CDC has issued a statement advising all citizens to avoid contact with anyone displaying erratic behaviour. The National Guard has been mobilised, and the governor is expected to address the state within the hour. The camera shakes. In the background, you can see figures moving erratically through the hospital parking lot. Some are running, screaming, others are stumbling forward with that same jerky, puppet-like movement you saw from Jim. The reporter's voice falters. I'm being told we need to... Oh God, they're coming this way. The feed cuts to static. You try other channels. Most are either off the air or showing test patterns. The few that remain are broadcasting similar scenes of chaos from cities across the country. New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, everywhere the same story. People biting people, hospitals overrun, military mobilising. Through your window, Mrs. Henderson is standing up. This should be good news. Maybe she's okay, maybe Jim just had some kind of episode, maybe the whole thing was a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by social media and 24-hour news cycles. But Mrs. Henderson moves like Jim now. The same grey skin, the same unfocused eyes, the same horrifying puppet walk. The bite wounds on her throat are clearly visible. Ragged tears in the flesh that should have killed her, would have killed her, did kill her. She's dead. You know this with the same certainty you know your own name. Mrs. Henderson, who baked cookies for the building's children and complained about loud music after 9 p.m, is dead. So why is she walking around your courtyard, looking for something, sniffing the air like a hunting dog catching a scent? Your emergency radio crackles to life. Fragments of official communications breaking through static. Multiple outbreaks confirmed. Bite transmission verified. Recommend extreme caution when approaching casualties. Shoot to kill authorization pending. Shoot to kill. The phrase hits your stomach like ice water. You're trapped in your apartment on the 3rd floor of a building that suddenly feels more like a cage than a home. Outside, your neighbours are turning into something that isn't quite human anymore. The military is talking about shooting American citizens. The news has gone dark, and this is just the first hour. You lock your front door, though you realise with growing dread that if Mrs. Henderson and Jim can still turn door handles, a simple deadbolt isn't going to save you. You close the blinds, shutting out the view of the courtyard where more figures are beginning to gather, some running and screaming, others moving with that terrible shambling gait. Your apartment, which felt cramped and boring yesterday, now seems impossibly small. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen, living room combo, and a small balcony that overlooks a 3-story drop into what's quickly becoming a hunting ground for things that used to be people. You inventory your supplies with new eyes, half a loaf of bread, some leftover Chinese takeout, a few cans of soup, 2 bottles of water, a mostly empty bottle of ibuprofen, your laptop, your phone, a battery-powered radio, and exactly 0 weapons more dangerous than a kitchen knife. In the movies, this is where the hero would start making improvised weapons and clever escape plans. In reality, you sit on your couch and try to convince yourself this is all a bad dream, while the sound of distant screaming filters through your walls. Welcome to the zombie apocalypse. Population decreasing rapidly. The hunger that never stops. Here's what the movies don't tell you about zombies. The smell. That rotting, sweet stench of decay mixed with something else. Something hungry that seems to seep through door cracks and window seals like a warning written in scent molecules. It's day 2, and you haven't eaten since yesterday morning's interrupted coffee and toast. Your stomach cramps with familiar hunger pangs, the kind that remind you it's been too long since your last meal. But outside your door lurks a different kind of hunger entirely, one that never stops, never sleeps, never gets satisfied no matter how much it consumes. You learned something terrible last night, lying awake in the dark listening to sounds you never want to hear again. The infected don't eat because they need nutrition. They don't stop when they're full. They eat because eating is all they remember how to do, and they remember it with the single-minded focus of a broken record player stuck on the same terrible song. Mrs. Henderson spent 4 hours last night trying to bite through Mr. Peterson's apartment door. You could hear her teeth scraping against wood, could hear the low moaning sound she makes now instead of words. Mr. Peterson stopped answering her calls around midnight. The scratching sounds from his apartment stopped around 3 a.m. This morning there are 2 shapes moving past your peephole instead of 1. The infected don't feel pain, don't experience exhaustion, don't have moments of doubt or self-reflection. They're driven by pure instinct, a biological imperative that reduces complex human beings to shambling appetite. While you're rationing crackers and wondering if the tap water is still safe to drink, they're single-mindedly hunting with the patience of geological time. You hear them in the hallways at all hours, shuffling footsteps that never seem to rest, low moans that might be communication, or might just be the sound air makes passing through throats that no longer remember how to swallow properly. The occasional thud as they bump into walls or doors, followed by the scratching sounds as they try to claw their way through obstacles they lack the cognitive ability to navigate around. Mrs. Henderson is definitely among them now. You caught a glimpse through your peephole around dawn, her floral housecoat stained dark brown with dried blood, her carefully permed hair matted and wild. Her face is slack except for those searching, cloudy eyes that seem to be looking for something just beyond their ability to focus on. They don't strategize or give up. If they know you're behind this door, and you're increasingly certain they do, they'll stay here, pressing against it, scratching at the wood with broken fingernails until either the door gives way or something else catches their attention. Time means nothing to them. Patience is irrelevant when you're already dead. The truly horrifying part is that they remember just enough to be effective. They can still open doors, though they sometimes forget to close them behind them. They can climb stairs, though they often fall and have to start over. They follow sounds and movement with the focused attention of predators, but lack the intelligence to understand concepts like trap or ambush. They're humans with everything stripped away except the drive to feed. All the love, creativity, humour, empathy, and complex thought that made them people has been burned out, leaving only hunger in a familiar shape. Your rational mind keeps offering hope, military rescue, government safe zones, some miracle cure being developed in an underground laboratory somewhere. The emergency broadcasts, when they come, speak of containment procedures and coordinated response efforts, but the broadcasts are getting weaker, less frequent, more desperate in tone. The helicopter that circled overhead all day yesterday hasn't returned. The sirens that wailed constantly through the first night have mostly gone silent. When you do hear them now, they're usually cut short by sounds you don't want to think about too hard. You're not waiting for rescue anymore. You're waiting for hunger, yours or theirs, to make the next move. And you're starting to realise that in this particular contest, time is on their side. The infected don't need food to survive, don't need water to function, don't need sleep to maintain their strength. You do. Every hour that passes makes you a little weaker, a little more desperate, a little more likely to make the kind of mistake that turns prey into predator. They can afford to wait. You can't. The fortress of cardboard dreams. Your apartment seemed cosy and secure just 3 days ago. Now it feels like a paper fortress hastily constructed against an unstoppable force. Let's take inventory of your defensive positions. Walls thin enough that you can hear every footstep in the hallway, a front door made of hollow wood that wouldn't stop a determined toddler, and windows that offer panoramic views of your impending doom. You've pushed furniture against the door, creating what you generously call a barricade. In reality, it's your kitchen table, a bookshelf, and your dresser all stacked together in a configuration that might delay the inevitable by about 30 seconds. The infected outside seem unimpressed by your engineering efforts, continuing their patient scratching and pressing against the door as if they have all the time in the world. Which of course they do. Your windows have become both your lifeline to the outside world and your greatest source of terror. Through them, you watch your neighbourhood transform from a quiet residential area into something from a fever dream. Cars sit abandoned in the street, doors hanging open like metal mouths frozen mid-scream. Some have crash damage where panicked drivers collided with other vehicles or ploughed through storefronts. Others show signs of violence, shattered windows, bloodstains on the asphalt, deep scratches in the paint that could only come from fingernails. A dog ran past your window yesterday morning, something dark staining its golden fur. It was limping badly, glancing over its shoulder as it ran with the desperate energy of prey. You don't know if it was injured by infected humans, or if it had simply witnessed things that dogs aren't equipped to understand. Either way, It was the last living animal you've seen moving freely through the streets. The apartment building across the street had lights in every window when this started. Families going about their normal routines, cooking dinner, watching television, helping children with homework. Now it's mostly dark, a tombstone of brick and glass standing silent against the sky. Except for one flickering bulb on the third floor that goes on and off at irregular intervals. Sometimes you see a shadow move past it. Quick, furtive movements that could be another survivor trying to stay hidden, or something else that's learned to manipulate light switches. You've stopped trying to decide which possibility is worse. Your phone died yesterday, its battery finally succumbing to your obsessive checking of news sites and social media feeds. The power grid failed this morning with a series of distant pops and flashes on the horizon. Transformer stations overloading or being destroyed, you assume. Your battery-powered radio offers nothing but static, and the occasional burst of automated emergency broadcasts that repeat the same useless information. Stay indoors, avoid contact with infected individuals, wait for official instructions. The silence between the static is worse than the noise. It means fewer people are left to broadcast, fewer emergency services responding to calls, fewer voices trying to coordinate some kind of organised response to the collapse of civilization. Food has become an obsession that occupies every waking moment. You've got a box of stale cereal that tastes like cardboard, some canned soup that you're stretching out by eating only half a can per day, and a banana that's turning brown and soft. The Chinese takeout from 3 days ago has started growing fuzzy green cultures that look like tiny cities of mould. Water is becoming a critical issue. Your faucet drips intermittently now, a slow, irregular rhythm that marks time like a broken metronome. The water pressure has been dropping steadily as pumping stations fail or are abandoned. You've filled every container you can find, pots, bowls, empty soda bottles, creating a small reservoir that might last another week if you're careful. Every creak of the building makes you freeze. Every footstep in the hallway could be death shuffling closer on unsteady legs. You've stopped sleeping in any meaningful way. Instead, you drift in and out of consciousness, always listening, always ready to run even though there's nowhere to go. The infected don't need fortresses. They don't need supplies or hope or carefully constructed barriers. They just need you to eventually make a mistake, to get desperate enough to open that door, to finally succumb to the simple mathematics of attrition. Your apartment isn't protecting you from the apocalypse. It's just slowing down your participation in it. The mathematics of dying. Let's talk numbers, because mathematics doesn't lie, even when everything else, the news, the government, your own hopes dash has proven to be built on wishful thinking and denial. You're one person with increasingly limited resources facing an exponentially growing threat. Basic infection dynamics work against you in every possible way. Patient 0 bites 2 people on day 1. Those 2 people, after their incubation period, each bite 2 more. By day 3, you've got 8 infected individuals. By day 7, assuming perfect transmission rates, you're looking at 128 infected people in your immediate area. But reality is messier and more terrifying than perfect mathematical models. Some infected bite more than 2 people before they're stopped. Some bite no one because they're put down quickly or isolated effectively. But the overall trend is clear and unstoppable. Exponential growth in a world where the healthy population can only decrease. You've been keeping count through your window, marking tallies on a piece of paper like some kind of apocalyptic bookkeeper. On day 1, you saw 3 infected individuals stumbling through the courtyard. Day 2 brought 7. Yesterday you counted 18 distinct figures shambling past your view, including several that used to be children from the elementary school down the street. Today you stopped counting at 30, because they're moving in loose groups now, following each other in ways that suggest some kind of basic pack behaviour or collective intelligence. They're not competing with each other for resources or territory. Every infected person makes the group stronger, more effective at tracking and cornering prey. Your supplies follow different mathematics, pure subtraction with no possibility of addition. Every meal brings you closer to empty. Every sip of water counts down your remaining time. You've done the calculations obsessively, running the numbers again and again like a prayer or a curse. If you strictly ration what you have left, eating 1 small meal per day, drinking just enough water to avoid dehydration, you might last another 6 days, maybe 7 if you're willing to eat the questionable leftovers and stretch your supplies beyond what's safe or nutritious. But the infected operate by different rules entirely. They don't eat each other, don't compete for limited resources, don't weaken from hunger or thirst or exhaustion. Their numbers can only grow while yours inevitably shrink. Time is their ally in ways that make your careful rationing seem like delaying the inevitable through elaborate self-torture. The news, before it stopped completely, talked about containment zones and evacuation procedures and coordinated military response. All fantasy. How do you evacuate a city when every evacuation route leads through territory controlled by infected individuals who never sleep, never give up, never get distracted by anything except the scent of living flesh? How do you contain something that spreads through the most basic human instinct, the desire to help injured people? Every EMT, every doctor, every good Samaritan who stopped to assist someone in distress became another vector for transmission. The infected don't need to be clever or strategic, they just need to look hurt and confused until someone gets close enough to help. Military response sounds promising until you consider the logistics. Even if soldiers don't hesitate to shoot neighbours and family members, even if they can maintain discipline and morale while watching civilization collapse around them, they're still human beings with human needs. They require food, water, ammunition, sleep, and medical care. The infected require nothing except opportunities to feed. Every soldier who falls becomes an infected soldier with military training and equipment. Every supply convoy that gets overrun becomes a mobile distribution centre for weapons and ammunition that the infected don't need but living humans desperately do. You do the mathematics again and again, hoping for different results, but always arriving at the same conclusion. This isn't a battle between humans and zombies that humans can win through superior technology and intelligence. It's a numbers game where exponential growth trumps every other consideration. The infected outside your door aren't getting tired or giving up or finding more interesting things to do. Every hour that passes, they're joined by more infected individuals drawn by sound or scent or simple chance. Their ranks grow while your strength diminishes. Time is the enemy now, and it's on their side. The silence between screams. Day 4 brings a new kind of horror. The absence of sound where sound should be. The screaming has mostly stopped now, not because things have gotten better, but because there's increasingly no one left to scream. During those first frantic hours, every scream that echoed through the streets meant another human was still fighting, still alive, still hoping for rescue or escape. Now the quiet stretches for hours, broken only by the shuffle of unsteady footsteps and low moans that echo off empty buildings, like the calls of some new species claiming territory. You've become an unwilling expert in the audio landscape of the apocalypse. The wet tearing noise when they find fresh prey, a sound like canvas ripping underwater, followed by gurgling that might be screams or might be something worse. The hollow thud of bodies hitting doors as infected individuals try to understand barriers. They lack the cognitive ability to navigate around. The scrape of fingernails against wood, metal, glass. A constant background rhythm of things that used to be human trying to claw their way to things that still are. Sometimes you hear evidence of other survivors scattered throughout the urban landscape. A woman sobbing in the building next door. Great gasping wails that go on for hours before cutting off abruptly in ways you don't want to think about. Footsteps running across rooftops in the distance suggesting someone has found the high ground and is trying to stay ahead of the shambling masses below. Yesterday, 3 quick gunshots echoed from the direction of downtown, followed by a longer silence than usual. You don't know if someone made a successful last stand against impossible odds, or if they simply chose a quicker exit than being eaten alive. Both options seem equally likely and equally tragic. The infected don't make conversation, but they do communicate in ways that suggest more intelligence than you're comfortable acknowledging. Low moans that seem to call others to specific locations. A shuffling coordination as they move in loose groups, following scent trails or sound signatures that living humans can't detect. They're learning, adapting, becoming more effective hunters with each passing day. Your own sounds have become sources of constant anxiety. The growl of your empty stomach, audible in the unnatural quiet of your apartment. The creak of floorboards under your feet as you move around your living space. Your breathing, which seems impossibly loud now that you're consciously trying to control it. Even your heartbeat sounds thunderous in the silence. You've started timing your movements to coincide with distant sounds. Thunder from approaching storms, car alarms from vehicles whose batteries haven't died yet, the crash of falling debris as abandoned buildings begin to collapse from neglect and damage. Any noise that might mask your presence for a few precious seconds. Sleep has become impossible in any traditional sense. Every time you close your eyes, your imagination fills the darkness with scenarios of them finding a way in, breaking down your pathetic barricade while you dream, discovering some vulnerability in your defences that you missed during your waking hours. Instead, you drift in and out of consciousness in short bursts, always listening, always ready to run even though there's nowhere to go. But run to where? The silence tells you everything you need to know about the world beyond your apartment walls. The screams have stopped because the people making them have joined the ranks of things that moan instead of talking, that hunt instead of hiding, that feed instead of feeling. The infected have inherited the quiet now. They move through it like predators in their natural habitat, while you cower like prey in a world that no longer has room for the living. When the lights go out forever. The power died at exactly 3:17 AM on your phone's dying screen, the last timestamp you'll see for what might be forever. One moment you were lying in bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to the sounds of shambling footsteps in the hallway outside. The next moment, everything went dark with a finality that felt like the world itself giving up. No electricity means no refrigeration, no communication systems, no heating or air conditioning, but most importantly it means no lights to create the illusion of safety, no way to keep the monsters at bay, both the real ones stumbling around outside and the imaginary ones that live in the corners of your mind. Darkness changes everything in ways you never considered during normal blackouts. Shadows move differently when you can't define their edges. Every sound amplifies when your eyes can't track its source to provide context and reassurance. The infected seem to move more freely in the dark, as if artificial light was the last thin barrier holding them back from complete dominance. Your flashlight has maybe 6 hours of battery life left, and you've been hoarding those hours like precious gems. Quick flashes to check your barricade for signs of breach. Brief illumination to navigate to the bathroom without tripping over furniture. Momentary sweeps to confirm that the shapes moving past your windows are what you think they are, and not something worse. Candles seem like an obvious solution until you consider their drawbacks in your current situation. The smell of smoke would announce your presence to anything with a functioning sense of smell. The flicker of flame through windows would be like sending written invitations to every infected individual in the area. Bright beacons advertising that someone living and breathing is hiding behind these walls. Even matches become precious resources when you only have half a book left and no way to acquire more. Food spoilage accelerates dramatically without refrigeration. Your last carton of milk curdled yesterday, creating a smell that made you gag and worry about attracting unwanted attention. The meat you were saving for a special occasion, because you thought there would be special occasions in your future, went bad overnight, filling your apartment with the sweet stench of decay. Even canned goods become suspect without proper storage. Temperature fluctuations, humidity, the stress of not knowing if your can opener will break. Every aspect of food preparation has become a source of anxiety when you can't simply drive to the grocery store for replacements. Water becomes critical in ways you never appreciated during normal life. Without electric pumps, your taps ran dry by noon yesterday. You filled every container you could find with the last trickles from your pipes, but it won't last long when you're using water, not just for drinking, but for basic hygiene and cleaning wounds from nervous scratching. Rain becomes precious, but collecting it means exposure and vulnerability. Opening windows to place containers outside, venturing onto your balcony with pots and bowls. Every interaction with the outside world carries risks you're not sure you're ready to take. The darkness reveals uncomfortable truths that daylight had been masking. How thin your walls really are. You can hear every movement in adjacent apartments now, including movements that don't sound quite human anymore. How many gaps exist in your defences, door frames that don't fit perfectly, window seals that let in more than just drafts, spaces under doors that might allow scents to escape. Most disturbing of all, the darkness shows you how completely unprepared you were for this scenario. All those zombie movies and apocalypse shows you watched for entertainment never mentioned the mundane realities of living without infrastructure. No dramatic music cues when your toothpaste runs out. No convenient montages to skip over the boring parts of rationing food and managing basic hygiene. In the dark, you can't tell the difference between shadows and threats, between familiar shapes and potential dangers. Your imagination fills empty spaces with horrors that may or may not be real, creating a psychological landscape where fear feeds on itself and grows stronger with each passing hour. The infected don't need light to hunt. They have other senses, other instincts refined by death and hunger into more effective tracking mechanisms than your living eyes could ever provide. The darkness isn't hiding you from them, it's hiding them from you. The last meal. Your stomach hasn't stopped cramping for 18 hours straight. The last can of soup disappeared yesterday afternoon. Tomato and rice that you stretched into 3 separate meals by adding hot water and wishful thinking. Your final sleeve of crackers crumbled into nothing but salty dust hours ago. This isn't Hollywood hunger, the kind where attractive actors look slightly pale but maintain perfect hair and teeth. This is real starvation, gnawing at your insides like a living creature that grows stronger while you grow weaker. The human body can survive approximately 3 weeks without food, assuming adequate water intake and minimal physical stress. You've been counting days on your fingers like a countdown to execution. Day 5 of no solid food. Day 3 of eating nothing but crumbs and wishful thinking. Day 1 of seriously considering options that would have horrified you a week ago. You've reached the point where you're evaluating the nutritional value of things that aren't technically food. That expired yogurt growing fuzzy green cultures in the back of your refrigerator. The mould might be penicillin, right? Medical breakthrough. The pet food you found in your hall closet left behind by the previous tenant. It's designed to provide complete nutrition for living creatures. How different could it be from human food? Even the bird seed from your window feeder starts looking like a viable option. Seeds are nutritious, full of proteins and healthy fats. People eat sunflower seeds all the time. The fact that these particular seeds were intended for sparrows and pigeons seems like an arbitrary distinction, when your stomach is eating itself. Outside your barricaded door, the infected don't have this problem. They've found plenty to eat over the past few days. Your neighbours, your friends, random strangers who thought they could make it to safety by running through streets controlled by predators that never tire, never give up, never get distracted by anything except the scent of living flesh. Their hunger is satisfied regularly and enthusiastically, while yours only grows more desperate with each passing hour. The irony isn't lost on you. In a world suddenly full of abundant food sources, you're the one starving while the monsters feast. Cannibalism whispers at the edges of your thoughts like a persistent salesman offering solutions to your problems. Not the infected kind of cannibalism, mindless, driven by viral imperatives and the breakdown of human consciousness. The survival kind, practiced by people throughout history when faced with death by starvation. That body in the hallway has been there for 3 days now. Mrs. Chen from 2B, who used to bring you cookies during the holidays and complain about the noise from upstairs neighbours. She's not moving anymore, not dangerous, not infected. Just protein going to waste while you slowly starve in your apartment fortress. You push the thought away, but it returns stronger each time, more detailed, more practical. How would you prepare the meat safely without proper cooking facilities? What parts would be most nutritious? Could you psychologically handle the process of butchering someone you knew? Someone who was kind to you, someone whose humanity you still remember? How many moral boundaries are you willing to cross to see another sunrise? How human will you be when this ends, assuming it ends with you still breathing? Water scarcity adds another layer of desperation to your situation. The last drops from your faucets disappeared yesterday. Rain hasn't fallen in 4 days, and even if it did, collecting it would mean exposing yourself to the infected masses that gather in your courtyard like moths drawn to the scent of life. You've considered drinking your own urine, sterile recycled hydration that might buy you another day or two. You've looked at the water in your toilet tank, which is actually cleaner than most people realise and might be safe to drink if you can get past the psychological barriers. Breaking into other apartments becomes a more attractive option, with each growling complaint from your stomach. But that means leaving your fortress, facing the infected directly, and competing with other survivors who might be just as desperate and much better armed than you. Every day without proper nutrition makes you slower, weaker, less able to run or fight if the situation requires sudden physical action. The infected don't weaken with hunger. Their drives remain constant while your capabilities diminish. You're becoming easier prey with each passing hour, less capable of the kind of decisive action that survival might require. You realise with horrible clarity that you're not just trapped in an apartment during a zombie apocalypse. You're trapped in the slow, methodical process of becoming prey, weakened by hunger, isolated by fear, and running out of options that don't involve abandoning your humanity, piece by piece. The hungry don't survive long in a world full of things that want to eat them, and you're very, very hungry. The breaking point, day 6. Your barricade finally failed, not with a dramatic crash, but with the slow, inevitable surrender of furniture that was never designed to hold back the persistent pressure of things that used to be human. It started with scratching, fingernails against your doorframe, persistent and rhythmic, like some kind of Morse code message you couldn't decode. Then pushing, as more infected individuals gathered outside your apartment, drawn by sound or scent or simply the patient certainty that something living was hiding behind your makeshift defences. The wood creaked first, then groaned, then began to splinter around the hinges. Your furniture fortress, the kitchen table, bookshelf and dresser that had seemed so solid and reassuring, began sliding across the floor inch by inch, pushed by the relentless pressure of bodies that didn't understand concepts like giving up or trying later. You'd imagine this moment hundreds of times during your sleepless nights, running through scenarios and escape plans with the obsessive detail of someone who knows their life depends on getting the choreography exactly right. The final breach, the rush of grey flesh and gnashing teeth, the split-second decision between fight and flight that would determine whether you joined the ranks of the living dead or simply became their next meal. The reality is quieter and more surreal than your imagination had prepared you for. The door doesn't explode inward dramatically like an action movie. It just opens slowly, inevitably, like a mouth yawning wide to reveal horrors that your mind struggles to process as real. Mrs. Henderson shuffles through first, her floral housecoat now decorated with dark stains and tears that tell stories you don't want to read. Behind her come more faces you recognise. Jim Morrison from down the hall, the college kid from 2A whose name you never learned, the elderly man from the first floor who always complained about noise after 9 p.m. They move with horrible purpose, reaching toward you with fingers that no longer quite remember how to grasp, but retain enough muscle memory to be effective. Their eyes are cloudy, unfocused, but they track your movement with the focused attention of predators who have found their prey. You have perhaps 3 seconds to decide, window or fight. The window is 4 floors up. Even if you survive the fall, you'll be injured, vulnerable, surrounded by more infected individuals on the street below who will hear the impact and come running. But staying means becoming like them, another shuffling nightmare in a blood-stained housecoat, adding your voice to the growing chorus of moans that echo through empty hallways. Your makeshift weapon, a kitchen knife taped to a broomstick with duct tape, feels pathetic in your hands. These were people you shared elevators with, people who borrowed sugar and complained about rent increases and held doors open when your arms were full of groceries. Now they're biological machines designed for one purpose, and that purpose is finding the soft parts of your body with their teeth. Time slows in the way it always does during crisis moments, your perception narrowing to hyper-focused details that will haunt your dreams if you live long enough to have dreams again. You can see every detail of their faces, the way Mrs. Henderson's lipstick is smeared across her cheek, the college kid's earbuds still hanging around his neck, the elderly man's reading glasses sitting crooked on his nose. Their mouths hang open like broken doors, revealing teeth stained with substances you don't want to identify. They move with the jerky coordination of marionettes operated by a drunk puppeteer, but there's nothing clumsy about their intent. They know you're here, they know you're alive, and they won't stop until that changes. This is how most survivors die in the real apocalypse, not in heroic last stands or dramatic sacrifices, but in small rooms with familiar faces, when exhaustion and desperation finally overcome hope and careful planning. Cornered by neighbours who remember just enough of their humanity to be effective hunters, but not enough to show mercy, the window suddenly seems very appealing. 4 floors is a long way to fall, but it's also 4 floors away from teeth that want to tear through your flesh, while you're still conscious to feel it happening. You make your choice. Jaska. Welcome to the new world. You didn't die in that apartment. Somehow, impossibly, you made it out. Through the window, down the fire escape that you'd never noticed before, past the infected mob gathering in the courtyard below. You're alive, breathing, still human in all the ways that matter and several that don't. Congratulations. Now the real nightmare begins. The outside world has become a museum of the apocalypse. Every street corner a diorama depicting the final moments of civilization. Cars sit abandoned with doors flung wide, their owners' last desperate moments frozen in rust and silence. Some vehicles have crash damage where panicked drivers collided with other cars or ploughed through storefronts in their haste to escape. Others show signs of violence. Shattered windows, bloodstains baked into the asphalt by days of unfiltered sunlight, deep scratches in the paint that could only come from human fingernails. Bodies lie where they fell, scattered across sidewalks and parking lots like discarded mannequins. Some are still moving, twitching occasionally or making weak grabbing motions at nothing. Others have achieved true stillness, their stories told in the positions they died, reaching for car keys, crawling toward doorways, curled in defensive positions that didn't provide enough protection when the time came. Many are in pieces. The infected don't clean up after themselves, don't practice portion control, don't worry about food safety or presentation. They eat what they can reach and leave the rest to decay under the open sky, creating a landscape where every step requires careful navigation around obstacles that used to be people. You're not alone out here in this new wilderness. Other survivors emerge from hiding places, basements, rooftops, abandoned buildings, storm drains. They move with the same careful, paranoid energy that you've developed, eyes constantly scanning for threats, hands never far from improvised weapons. But these aren't friendly faces offering help and companionship in humanity's darkest hour. They're competition. Competition for the same dwindling resources, canned food in ransacked grocery stores, clean water from compromised sources, medical supplies from looted pharmacies, weapons and ammunition from sporting goods stores and police stations that may or may not still contain more infected than supplies. Trust becomes not just difficult, but actively dangerous. That couple sharing their water and offering directions to a safe zone might be genuinely helpful, or they might be sizing you up for robbery once you let your guard down. The friendly stranger with the clean clothes and well-fed appearance might know something you don't about finding resources, or they might have achieved their healthy appearance through methods you don't want to think about too carefully. Everyone's hungry now. Everyone's armed with whatever they could find or improvise. Everyone's operating under the same brutal calculus that says betraying others might be the difference between living another day and joining the shambling masses that grow larger with each passing hour. The infected, meanwhile, have inherited the earth with the patience of geological time. They move through empty cities like tourists in their own private theme park, no longer constrained by traffic lights or business hours or social conventions. No schedules to keep, no stress about deadlines or mortgage payments or relationship drama. Just the simple pleasure of an endless hunt in a target-rich environment. They've achieved a kind of terrible freedom that living humans can only envy from a distance. No anxiety about the future, no regrets about the past, no complex emotions to navigate or difficult decisions to second-guess. Just hunger and the satisfaction of feeding over and over without the complications of conscience or consequence. You realise with dawning horror that you're not trying to survive until rescue arrives, because rescue isn't coming. The military response you heard about on those early radio broadcasts, those soldiers are either dead, infected, or have retreated to defensive positions where they're trying to protect whatever fragments of government and infrastructure might still be salvageable. This isn't a temporary crisis that will resolve itself once the proper authorities take control of the situation. This is life now, running, hiding, scrounging for supplies, and slowly losing pieces of your humanity with each moral compromise you make to see another sunrise. The apocalypse isn't an event that happens and then ends, leaving survivors to rebuild in the aftermath. It's a new way of living, a permanent change to the basic rules that govern human existence, and you're not sure you want to learn how to be good at it. The things we do to survive. 3 weeks into the end of the world, you've discovered capabilities you never knew you possessed, and lost parts of yourself you thought were permanent fixtures of your identity. You killed someone yesterday, not infected, human, alive, breathing, probably somebody's son or brother or father, trying to make it home to whatever remained of his family. It happened fast. A struggle over your backpack, The one containing your last bottle of antibiotics and precious water purification tablets, medical supplies that could mean the difference between life and death from infection or disease. His knife came out first, a rusty hunting blade with a worn leather grip. Yours followed seconds later, the kitchen knife you'd been carrying since escaping your apartment fortress. The fight was brief, desperate and ugly. No dramatic choreography or clever one-liners, just two scared people trying to kill each other over resources that wouldn't have seemed valuable a month ago. When it was over, he was still, and you were covered in warm blood that wasn't your own, staring down at a face that couldn't have been much older than yours. Young, desperate, his eyes still holding traces of the person he'd been before hunger and fear turned him into someone willing to murder strangers for medical supplies. You tell yourself it was self-defense, survival, him or you in a situation where compromise wasn't possible and walking away wasn't an option. These are true statements. They're also inadequate explanations for the weight that settled in your chest afterward, the way his face has taken up permanent residence in your memory alongside Mrs. Henderson and Jim Morrison, and all the other people who used to be human. The infected are almost easier to deal with now, psychologically if not physically. They're not people anymore, just biological problems requiring biological solutions. A knife through the temple, a blunt object to the skull, fire if you can manage it safely. Mercy killings, really. They're already dead, just haven't stopped moving yet. But the living present harder choices, more complex moral equations that don't have clear solutions. Do you share food with a sick child hiding in the pharmacy, knowing it means less nutrition for yourself when you're already operating on dangerously low caloric intake? Do you warn other survivors about the infected nest you discovered in the subway tunnel? Or let them walk into it so they can't compete with your group for territory and resources? You've become tribal in ways that would have seemed primitive and cruel in the old world, loyal only to your small group of fellow survivors. 4 people total now, after picking up Sarah and Marcus during a supply run gone wrong, and losing David to a bite that got infected despite your best medical efforts. You share everything with your group. Food, water, ammunition, body heat on cold nights when fuel for fires is too dangerous or too precious to burn. But you've also agreed, unanimously and without much discussion, that if someone gets bitten they don't get to turn. A quick death while they're still human, still themselves, still deserving of dignity rather than the shambling mockery they'll become. Sarah got scratched 2 days ago during a scavenging expedition to what used to be a veterinary clinic. Just a graze from broken glass, nothing that should have been dangerous. But for 6 hours you all watched her like hawks circling wounded prey, hands resting on weapons, ready to do what needed to be done if fever set in, or if her behaviour started showing the telltale signs of infection. She was fine. This time. The scratch healed clean, no signs of the viral contamination that turns people into monsters. But those 6 hours taught everyone in the group something important about the new rules of friendship and loyalty. Love means being willing to kill the people you care about before they become something that will kill you. You've learned skills that weren't part of your pre-apocalypse education. How to move silently through urban environments, where every footstep could attract attention from things that hunt by sound. How to kill efficiently with improvised weapons, conserving ammunition for situations where noise doesn't matter, but stopping power does. How to sleep with one eye open, maintaining enough awareness to respond to threats while still getting the rest your body needs to function. You can spot infected individuals from 3 blocks away now, recognizing them by their movement patterns, their posture, the way they interact with their environment. You know which buildings are likely to contain useful supplies and which are death traps full of infected individuals or unstable survivors. You've developed an instinct for reading people quickly, determining within minutes whether a new encounter represents potential alliance, competition, or immediate threat. These are valuable skills in the new world, practical abilities that increase your chances of seeing tomorrow. But sometimes, during quiet moments between crises, you catch glimpses of your reflection in broken windows and wonder what you've become. The person who worried about credit scores and grocery lists and whether to watch Netflix or Hulu seems like someone from a children's story. Innocent, naive, human, in ways you no longer recognize in yourself. That person would be horrified by the things you've done, the choices you've made, the calculations you now perform automatically when deciding whether another human being lives or dies. Survival requires sacrificing the parts of yourself that would hesitate, that would show mercy to enemies, that would put abstract moral principles before concrete survival needs. The apocalypse doesn't just kill bodies, it kills souls, piece by piece, choice by terrible choice. And the worst part? You're getting good at it. The killing, the lying, the theft, the betrayal. All the things that would have kept you awake at night in the old world now come as naturally as breathing. You're adapting to your new environment with the same biological efficiency that turned your neighbours into hunting machines. The final truth. 6 months after the first bite, after the last government broadcast faded to static, after hope finally died and was buried in unmarked graves throughout empty cities, you understand the real horror of the zombie apocalypse. It's not that everyone becomes infected, it's that everyone becomes infected in their own way. The shambling masses in the streets are just the most obvious casualties, their transformation visible and immediate. But look around at the survivors. Really look at the people who've managed to stay alive and human in this new world. The woman who poisons other groups' water supplies to protect her own resources. The man who uses infected individuals as weapons, herding them toward the rival survivor camps like biological artillery. The children who've learned to kill without emotion, because emotion is a luxury that gets you killed. You've all been bitten in a sense, not by teeth but by necessity. The infection spreading through survivor communities isn't viral, it's moral decay, the gradual erosion of everything that made you human beings rather than just clever animals fighting over scraps in the ruins of civilization. The infected outside your walls don't lie to each other, don't cheat or betray or sacrifice the weak for the benefit of the strong. They don't hoard supplies while others starve, don't manipulate emotions to gain advantage, don't make alliances they plan to break when circumstances change. In some twisted way, they're more honest than you've become, pure in their simple hunger, uncomplicated by the rationalizations and justifications that living humans use to explain away their increasingly inhuman behavior. You look at your reflection in a broken storefront window and see hollow eyes in a dirty face, hands that have done terrible things, scars that tell stories you don't like to remember. The person staring back isn't entirely human anymore. Not infected, not zombie, but something else. Something that learned to survive by becoming predatory, by embracing the parts of human nature that civilization used to keep in check. The apocalypse isn't coming. It's here, and it's not the shuffling corpses in the street or the empty cities or the collapsed infrastructure. It's you making choices that would have horrified the person you were before. It's all of you, the survivors, carrying the infection of moral compromise into whatever comes next. Sarah killed Marcus last week, not because he was bitten, or because he threatened the group, but because he'd found a cache of medical supplies and wasn't sharing them equally. She did it quietly, efficiently, while he slept, then told the rest of you that he'd been killed during a supply run. You all knew she was lying. You all agreed to accept the lie because Marcus had been hoarding resources and because Sarah is valuable to the group's survival. That's the new math of human relationships. Not love or loyalty or shared values, but utility and threat assessment. People are kept alive as long as they're useful and eliminated when they become liabilities. The infected at least have the courtesy to be obvious about their intentions. If civilization ever returns, and that's a bigger if than anyone wants to acknowledge, it won't be built by the people who walked into the apocalypse. It'll be constructed by the people who crawled out the other side, scarred and changed and carrying darkness they can never fully wash away. The zombies just eat flesh. The survivors eat souls, their own and others, piece by piece, day by day, choice by terrible choice. In the end, maybe that's the most terrifying part of the zombie apocalypse. The undead stop being human immediately, cleanly, completely, but the living become inhuman slowly, gradually, while still remembering what they used to be. You've survived the apocalypse. The question is whether you've survived as anything worth being. And as you settle down for another night in the ruins of the world, listening for the sounds of things that hunt in the darkness, you're no longer sure the distinction matters. Welcome to the world after. Try to get some sleep if you can. And remember, in the zombie apocalypse, the real monsters might be the ones still breathing. Epilogue. The things we remember. 1 year after the world ended, you sit in what used to be a public library, surrounded by books no one will ever read again. The building is secure. You've cleared it of infected, barricaded the entrances, set up basic living quarters in the children's section, where the windows are high and the sightlines are good. Your group has grown to 12 people now. a small community of survivors who've learned to work together not out of friendship or shared ideals, but out of mutual benefit and the simple mathematics of safety in numbers. You have rules, schedules, assigned duties, and a rough form of governance that keeps everyone fed and the watch schedules maintained. You've become the closest thing to civilization that exists in your corner of the world. But late at night, when you're on guard duty and the infected are shuffling through the streets below, you think about the person you used to be. The one who complained about traffic jams and worried about student loan payments and spent Sunday afternoons watching football games that seemed important at the time. That person seems like a character from a fairy tale now, innocent and naive and completely unprepared for the realities of human nature when all the comfortable illusions are stripped away. You envy that person sometimes, the luxury of believing that people were fundamentally good, that help would always come, that tomorrow would be basically like today, but with minor improvements. The books around you are full of stories about heroes who maintain their humanity through impossible challenges, who find ways to be noble and good even when the world falls apart around them. Those stories seem like cruel jokes now, written by people who never had to choose between their own survival and their moral principles. But sometimes, in quiet moments between the violence and the fear, you catch glimpses of something that might be hope. The way Sarah shared her water with the sick child you found hiding in the basement. The night Marcus stayed awake tending to your fever when infection from a cut almost killed you. The morning you all worked together to give David a proper burial instead of just leaving his body for the infected. Small kindnesses that don't make tactical sense. Moments of humanity that serve no survival purpose but happen anyway. Maybe the person you were isn't completely dead. Maybe some part of what made you human has survived the transformation, scarred and twisted but still recognisable. The infected outside don't remember who they used to be. They've lost everything that made them individuals, their memories, their relationships, their capacity for growth and change. But you remember. You remember Mrs. Henderson's cookies and Jim Morrison's polite nods in the elevator and the college kids' music that was always a little too loud. You remember the person you were before the world ended, and maybe that's enough. Maybe survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about carrying some piece of the old world into the new one, keeping alive the possibility that someday, somehow, people might remember how to be human again. The sun is rising now, painting the empty streets in shades of gold and amber that make the ruins look almost beautiful. Another night survived, another day to face whatever challenges come next. You wake the next person on watch schedule and head to your sleeping area, past the rows of books that contain all the accumulated wisdom of a civilization that couldn't survive its own success. Tomorrow you'll face the same choices, make the same hard decisions, do whatever it takes to keep your small community alive in a world that wants to kill them. But tonight, for just a moment, you remember what it felt like to be human, and maybe that's enough to start with.